we were talking about forward contracts. In the last class, we concluded with discussion of the various types of fundamental derivatives. We talked about forward contracts, we talked about futures, options and swaps, what basically they mean. Now, we will talk in detail about the various aspects of forward contracts. The basic terminology first. The asset that is to be delivered, that is going to change hands under the forward contract, is called the underlying asset. For example, if you are having a forward contract in US dollars, that US dollars forms the underlying asset. The maturity is the date on which the forward contract is going to be finally settled. In other words, when the US dollars will be delivered to you by the bank and when you will make the payment against the two legs of the forward contract. That is called the maturity of the contract. The price at which the exchange is going to take place, which is negotiated and finalized today, is called the exercise price or the strike price. Exercise price or strike price, it is also called the forward price. Now, there is some terminology in the context of financial derivatives. In the context of financial assets in general, this is called long and short positions. You are long in an asset if you own the asset. If you are owning an asset, you are said to be long in the asset. And if you are borrowing the asset, you are said to be short in the asset. So, if you hold an asset, you are an owner of an asset. If you possession of the asset, you are said to be long in the asset, and if you have borrowed the asset from somebody, you are said to be short in that asset. In the context of a forward contract, a long forward position is a position where you are going to receive the asset under the forward contract. You are going to receive the asset under the forward contract, and the short position under the forward contract is the delivery of the asset. The short party is going to deliver the asset under the forward contract. So, the party who is going to receive the asset is the long party, the party is going to deliver the asset is the short party. In the context of options, the party who owns the option or who has bought the option, who is the holder of the option, who gets the right, is said to be long in the option, and the party who has written the option or who is short in the who is the party that is going to honor the option, which has no discretion. The party that has no discretion is said to be short in the option. Now, obviously, a party who is long under a forward contract will benefit from a price rise. Why is that? For example, if you have undertaken a forward contract with a bank to buy US dollars, in other words, you have taken a long position in US dollars at a price of say 75 rupees, and the dollar price on the date of maturity of the forward contract turns out to be 80 rupees. You can obviously take the dollars at 75 rupees from the bank and sell it in the open market at 80 rupees. So, higher the price on the date of maturity of the underlying asset, greater is the profit to you. And conversely, if the price falls, you are going to lose if you are long in the asset, long in the forward contract, and vice versa holds for the short position. A short position benefits from a price fall, and a short forward position loses when the price rises. Now, if I enter into a forward contract today, the price at which I am going to enter into the forward contract is said to be the forward price of the asset. For example, if I am going to get US dollars after 3 months at rupees 75 per dollar, that 75 rupees constitutes the forward price of the US dollars under the forward contract for 3 months for delivery at the end of 3 months. Now, the important thing is the net value of the contract, net value of the forward contract as on the date of inception is 0. The net value of the forward contract as on the date of the inception of the contract is 0. Why is that? Suppose I approached bank X and bank ABC and bank XYZ for getting a forward contract on 100 US dollars maturity after 3 months. The banks are the forward contract that I envisage is the same in the context of both the banks, and the credit worthiness of both the banks is also the same. and their assessment of my credit worthiness is also the same. The question is, can they charge different prices? The answer is a very obvious no. How can they do that? Because if they do that, arbitrage will take place, okay, and as equilibrium approaches, the two prices have to converge, okay, and that one price, that is the converged price, constitutes the forward price. So, as on the date of the inception of the contract, negotiation of the contract, the net value of a forward contract is invariably 0, and the forward price is that price which makes this net value 0, which is dictated by the market. Another very interesting question is, why are forward contracts termed as derivatives? At first sight, it may seem that the value of the rate at the maturity of the forward contract is fixed. So, if the rate at maturity of the forward contract is fixed, how does it become a derivative? The answer to this is that, let us say I start at t equal to 0, that today I enter into a forward contract. I enter into a forward contract in US dollars at rupees 75 per dollar, maturity after 3 months. So, today is 1st January, let us say I get delivery on 1st of April. 1st of April, 1 US dollar is worth 75 rupees as contracted on 1st of January. Now, we live in a dynamic world, dynamic environment. So, as time passes, the perception of the market about the rate of the US dollar versus rupees or whatever other currency, US dollar as on 1st April, that means the rate for delivery on 1st April is going to change. The US the economy may flourish, or the Indian economy may flourish, or whatever may happen. Certain external circumstances can always happen. Whatever happens, there is a distinct possibility, and in fact, a distinct probability that the rates as on 1st April for delivery of US dollars will be different as we move forward from 1st of January. Let us say on 15th of January, the US dollar rates have increased, the US dollar rates have gone up to 80 rupees for delivery on 1st of April. In other words, if I enter into a fresh forward contract on 15th of January for delivery on 1st of April, I have to pay a price of rupees 80 per US dollar. It can happen. Now, the earlier contract which was entered into on 1st January for delivery on the same date, that is 1st of April, was at 75 rupees per US dollar. As on 15th January, a new contract envisaging the same delivery of the same asset under same conditions is costing me 80 rupees. So, naturally, the earlier contract will be worth a positive value for the person who is holding that contract, or who is going to buy dollars against that contract. Why? Because he is going to get dollars at 75 rupees, you are going to get dollars at 80 rupees. In other words, that forward contract is now commanding a positive value for the party who is long in the contract, and a negative value for a party who is short in the contract. It is a zero sum game. So, with the change in the perception of the price prevailing on the maturity date of the forward contract acquires a value, and that value gradually changes in relation to that change in perception, and that is why it is termed as a derivative. Because there is a functional relationship between the price of the dollar and the value of the contract, this qualifies as a financial derivative. Now, there is a concept called payoff and profit diagram. You see, on the date of maturity, we enter into derivative contracts at a particular date. As I mentioned in one of the first slides, the IFRS definition in fact of derivative says that derivatives are settled in future. In other words, I enter into a derivative contract now, the settlement of the derivative contract takes place at a later date. Now, as of now, if I want to analyze the various possibilities, the various payoffs or the profits, the profit spectrum that I am likely to get when in context of various possible values, see the underlying is following a stochastic process. It's a random process. Tomorrow it may have some price, day after tomorrow it may have some price, next few days the price continuously changes every day. In fact, every minute, for example, the stock prices change, the currency prices also change. So, invariably the price on the maturity of the forward contract, for example, will also have a spectrum of values, possible prices. In context of those possible prices, what are the possible payoffs from the derivatives becomes a very relevant question, because that is what is ultimately going to decide my investment strategy in these derivative instruments. And one way of, very simple way of analyzing them is the payoff diagram, is the profit or the payoff diagram. I reiterate, you see the underlying price process is a random variable and the derivative is a function of that random variable. So, what possible values the derivative can take or the derivative payoffs can take in context of various values of that random variable, various states of nature as you call it, is a very interesting problem, and that can be analyzed through payoffs and profit diagram. So, what is the difference between payoff and profit diagram? Payoff gives you the payoff on maturity, the net cash flow on the date of maturity. The profit diagram gives you the cash flow less the cost of inception of the strategy. For example, let us look at the payoff of an asset position, very simple. You are having a stock. So, what is the payoff of the stock position? Let us say you own the stock. Now, because you own the stock, you are long in the stock, right. Now, as the price of the stock goes up, your profit also goes up. Suppose you have bought the stock at S naught, you have bought the stock at S naught, and the various, obviously the price cannot be negative. So, the various possible prices are depicted along the x axis, which gives you the price of underlying on maturity. Maturity may be any date which you choose, for example, comparing your investment horizon. So, if the stock price on maturity, that is S capital T is less than S naught, then obviously you incur a loss, because you bought the asset at S naught, the current price is S t, and therefore, you incur a loss of S t minus S naught, and which is depicted by this 45-degree line. And as soon as the price or the possible price goes beyond S naught, you start making a profit. So, this is the example of a payoff diagram. Now, as you can see, the profit is given by S t minus S naught. If you compare it with the standard straight line equation, y is equal to m x plus c, you clearly find that m is equal to 1, that means a 45-degree line, and c is equal to minus S naught, that is the loss, that is the intercept on the y axis, which represents the loss if the stock price is 0. Now, for the other context is when you have borrowed that asset. Now, if you have borrowed that asset, you paid a certain, at that point when you borrowed the asset, you can sell the asset and you can get a certain price, but you have to replenish that asset to the original owner. Let us say you replenish the asset to at maturity. Now, suppose on the date of replenishment of the asset, the market price turns out to be 0. What will you do? You will simply take the asset and give it to the person from whom you have borrowed, and you made a profit of S naught minus 0, that is S naught. So, your profit now turns out to be S naught minus S t. As the current price increases, your profit decreases, and that can be easily seen. The slope is now minus 1, and that means the angle is minus 45 degrees. And the intercept is also plus S naught. So, if the market price of the share or the stock is 0, you make the maximum profit, and that maximum profit is the profit at which you which existed is the price of the share which existed when you borrowed that share and sold it in the market. A very similar situation is in the case of a forward position. In the case of a forward position, what happens? You are guaranteed a certain price of acquisition. The forward price is entered into today, executed at capital T, but the price is known, let us call it K. So, the payoff is what? You buy the asset, suppose you have a long forward position, that means what? That means you will buy the asset at capital K, or the strike price of the forward contract, or the forward price, that is capital K. You will give him capital K rupees, he will give you 1 unit of the asset, you will sell the asset in the market at the then prevailing market price, which is ST. So, ST minus K represents your profit if you are long in a forward contract, and the converse is when you are short forward. In fact, long positions and short positions are mirror images of each other about the x axis. So, this is how it operates. Now, we come to a very important aspect. I have mentioned a little while earlier that pricing of any asset, including derivatives, is determined by demand and supply. And nevertheless, we have a certain price as per certain assumptions of the behavior of financial markets. The most common assumption that we make while pricing certain financial assets is the concept of no arbitrage. This no arbitrage price gives us a certain theoretical price of the asset being priced, and at this price the philosophy is that the market trading or the market will accept this without any arbitrage opportunities. But it must be emphasized that trading does take place. You see, there can be situations where the actual market price does not necessarily coincide with this no arbitrage price at all points in time. There can be asymmetries, various types of asymmetries in the market, which may result in the actual market price being different from or slightly different from the no arbitrage prices, and as a result of which trading may take place. My perception of the price of an asset or the value of an asset, let me not use the word price, let me use the word value. My perception of the value of an asset as determined by me may be, say, rupees 100. That same asset may be trading in the market at rupees 110. What is my immediate reaction? I may feel that market is overpricing that asset is worth 100 according to me, market is paying 110 for that, so let us sell that asset. On the other hand, if my perception of the value of an asset as ascertained by me is 140 rupees and the market price is 120, what will I do? I will say the market is overpricing that asset, market is underpricing that asset, I am sorry, market is underpricing that asset, and therefore, I will buy that asset, because I feel that I am getting something worth 140 rupees at a cost of 120 rupees, and that is how trading operates. How I work out that perception is a separate issue, we will be talking about it gradually. But when we talk about forward pricing, as I mentioned, the most important principle that we invariably follow is the principle of no arbitrage. But in the context of forward pricing, we need to segregate assets into two types of assets. Why we do that will be clear in due course when we talk more about pricing. But the classification is investment assets, in other words, assets that are not held directly for consumption, for example, gold, silver, shares, stock, bonds. These are assets which are not held for consumption, and the other is consumption assets which are held for actual consumption, for example, coal, wheat, copper, and so on. There is a significant difference in the pricing strategies of these two. That is why the segregation is necessary. But we first talk about investment assets. I have already explained the principle of no arbitrage. No arbitrage means that two assets having identical risk profiles, identical maturities, identical payoffs on maturity cannot be priced differently, because arbitrage will ensure, in other words, buy sell process will ensure that at equilibrium the two have to coincide, converge. So, let us take with a very simple situation. We ignore transaction costs altogether, market frictions of any type, commissions, broker commissions we ignore bid ask spread, that means buying lending spread, buying selling spread. We also ignore borrowing lending spread, that means we keep that exposition as simple as possible. All kind of market frictions are ignored. And secondly, we assume that holding the underlying asset during the life of the forward contract does not result in any cost, nor does it give rise to any income. For example, there is no consideration of any dividend during the life of the forward contract, and there is no consideration of any cost involved, for example, insurance in holding the asset. Let us keep the exposition as simple as possible. What do? We borrow a sum of money equal to today's spot price of the asset, today's market price of the asset. Let us call it S naught as today's market price. If I buy one US dollar or one share in the market, I have to pay say 500 rupees, that is what is the value of S naught, today's market price of the underlying asset. And I borrow that amount of money because I do not have any money, I do not start with any money. I borrow a certain amount of money, and that money is equal to the value or the market price, the current prevailing market price of the asset, so that I can buy the asset, and I do buy the asset. At the same time, I take a short position under a forward contract for delivery with maturity T. In other words, after time T, I have to deliver that asset to the party who is long in that contract. I am short in the contract, so I have to deliver the asset. The party who is long in the contract will receive the asset and give me cash. And how much cash he will give me? That is F naught, that is today's forward price. Today's price for delivery at time T. Price is fixed today, important. So, price is fixed today for delivery at maturity, that is capital T, right. So, I repeat, I borrow a certain amount of money S naught, buy the asset, keep it with me, and at the same time I take a short position under a forward contract, so that I can deliver the asset that I have bought and receive a certain amount of money F naught. What does it happen? You can see a square on the right hand corner of the slide, A, B, C, D. We shall perform these operations. A, B, we buy the asset from the spot market, I have just explained that. B, C, you hold the asset with you, do nothing, just hold the asset. And C, D, now you are at time T, you hold the asset from T equal to 0 to T equal to capital T, the maturity of the forward contract. You keep it with you, you keep the share with you, right. And then at T equal to capital T, you deliver the asset to the party, to the counterparty against the forward contract, and you receive an amount F naught. This F naught, the present value of this F naught, that is DA, the present value of this F naught can be used for meeting the present value of S naught, which is nothing but S naught. So, in other words, the present value of, in order that there should be no arbitrage, what should happen? What is the condition? What is the requisite for no arbitrage? That the present value of S naught must be present value of F naught must be equal to S naught, and that is what it is. F naught exponential e to the power minus R t minus S naught is equal to 0. Because I started with 0 money, so I must end with 0 money, otherwise arbitrage will take place. So, because I started with 0 money, I end with 0 money, and that implies that the present value of f naught that I receive at D is equal to S naught. In other words, you can put it this way, the future value of S naught, you borrowed an amount S naught, you have to repay this. How much will you repay? You will repay S naught plus the interest thereon, and that will be S naught exponential R t. So, this amount that you now repay must be met out of the proceeds that you receive from the forward contract. So, f naught must be equal to S naught e to the power R t. Either way you can work it out, it comes to the same. So, this is the f naught is what? F naught is the theoretical forward price or the no arbitrage forward price as of today for delivery of the asset whose current spot price is S naught t years from today. What is R? R is the risk free rate. So, the next question is why R is the risk free rate? Let us answer that question. Let us look at this arbitrage process again. I borrow S naught, buy the asset in the market. So, I have the asset with me, borrowing S naught, having the asset with me, no risk involved, keep the asset with me, no risk involved. Now, we are assuming that the forward contract is default free. For the moment, we are assuming that the forward contract is default free, that means both the parties will honor their legs of the forward contract. In other words, what will happen at t equal to maturity, t capital T? What will happen is that the party who is short in the contract, that is me, will deliver the asset and I will receive the amount f naught. This is also certain. It is certain that I have the asset S naught or S. It is certain that I receive f naught on maturity, because now the amount that I have borrowed S naught, from where do I have to pay it? I have to pay it simply from the proceeds of the forward contract, and the proceeds of the forward contract are certain because we are assuming away any default risk. So, f naught is certain, S naught is obviously certain, it has already happened. Okay. So, because f naught is certain and f naught is going to be used for paying S naught, there is no risk involvement at any point at any of the legs of that square, and as a result of which we assume R to be the risk free rate, because the repayment of S naught is a certainty in the event of the forward contract being default free, because the repayment has to be met out of only the proceeds of the forward contract, which we are assuming, I reiterate, which we are assuming to be risk free or default free. So, that is why we use the risk free rate for valuing a forward contract. Now, a variation. Now, we have talked about the simplest example where we have ignored all transaction costs, all market frictions, and we have also ignored any income arising during the life of the asset, during the life of the contract, forward contract on the asset. In other words, if you are holding the share is not going to give you any dividend. That was the assumption up to now. Let us now relax this assumption that in other words, we assume that during the life of the forward contract, that is 0 comma t, at some point in this interval, the stock that we are holding, the share that we are holding, or any other asset that we are holding will give a certain amount of dividend. A certain amount of dividend. Amount is, I reiterated, amount, not percentage, amount. Let us say that amount is d tau. So, d tau is the amount of dividend that I receive in currency units in the interval 0 t. Tau is a particular point in 0 capital T. D tau is the amount that we receive. Okay. And let d 0 be its present value. Okay. D tau is the actual amount received at point t, d 0 is its present value, that is d tau e to the power minus r tau. Okay, anyway, now the point is, at the in the previous case we had borrowed an amount S naught, we had borrowed an amount S naught to buy 1 unit of the asset. Now, because D naught we are going, you see D naught amount we can borrow against this dividend that we get, the net amount that we borrow in addition to D naught becomes less. In other words, suppose I was to borrow 500 rupees for buying that share and the present value of dividend comes to be 100 rupees. So, 100 rupees I am borrowing against the dividend that I am going to get, and the remaining amount that I have to borrow is only 400 rupees. 100 rupees I can repay out of the dividend that I am going to get at time t equal to tau d tau, that is the meaning of present value. So, 100 rupees that I am going to borrow is going to be borrowed against the dividend stream or the dividend input that I am going to get by holding the asset, and the rest I will borrow for buying the asset. So, my net borrowing instead of S naught now becomes S naught minus D naught, S naught minus D naught. Therefore, the remaining steps remain literally the same, and we end up with the equation, as you can see the last equation on the slide, F naught is equal to S naught minus D naught exponential R t. The correction is equal to the present value of dividend. It reduces the spot price because it is something which you are getting by holding the asset in your drawer. Simply by holding the asset you are getting this amount of money. So, obviously, it reduces the cost of carrying the asset. So, in other words, your borrowing for the asset goes down from S naught to S naught minus D naught, and therefore, with the no arbitrage condition, we have S naught minus D naught exponential R t is equal to F naught. Another variant of this is when we are given the income not in terms of a dollar value or a rupee value or in terms of currency units, but we are given the return in terms of a percentage. For example, interest rate, continuous compounded interest rates. Let us say we are talking about the no arbitrage price of a US dollar with a forward contract of maturity T. Now, if I buy the US dollars in the spot market and pay S naught, if I buy the US dollars in the spot market and pay S naught, then by keeping this US dollars with me, will I do that first of all? I will not do that. I would rather invest that US dollar in a dollar deposit. I will not keep it with me. What is the point in keeping, when you can get a certain income from an asset, a risk free income, why do you want to keep it in your drawer? So, if I in the spot leg, if I buy US dollars in the spot market for a price S naught, let us say S naught, then I can invest that asset in the market or in any bank in a US dollar deposit at a certain risk, in a risk free deposit at a certain risk free rate. Why a risk free deposit? Because I want the risk to be out of the equation. I do not want to consider risk in the pricing equation. Okay, so, in that case what happens? Now, in that case it is a slightly variation of the previous analysis. For getting $1 on maturity, suppose I want $1 on maturity because I have taken a short position in US dollars for one US dollar. So, I have to deliver $1 US on maturity. I have to deliver $1 US on maturity. To get $1 on maturity, how many dollars do I buy today? And that is e to the power minus q t, because e to the power minus q t compounded at the rate q will give me $1 after time t. Q is the interest rate on US dollars. So, today I buy, in the previous case I had bought 1 share or 1 unit of the underlying asset and delivered 1 unit of the underlying asset. Here I deliver 1 unit of the underlying asset, but because I have a yield, so I need to buy a smaller amount, and that is e to the power minus q t. To buy e to the power minus q t in the spot market, the price I have to pay is S naught e to the power minus q t. This is what I have to pay, and therefore, this is the amount that I will borrow. I will not borrow S naught, I will borrow S naught e to the power minus q t. And so, what will I pay on maturity? On maturity, I will pay S naught e to the power minus q t whole thing e to the power r t, and this must be equal to f 0. That is our required condition. So, we will continue from here on. We have talked about the pricing of forward contracts in 2 contexts: pricing where we are having no income and pricing where we are having different types of income, either income in terms of currency units or income in terms of percentage yield. We will move on from here in the next lecture. Thank you very much, all of you.